Welcome to Breakout Session 1. This program is designed to help students and families with the FAFSA in the home situation where the parents are living with the student. And it can be that the parents are married or not married. They may be divorced or legally separated, but both parents are living with the student. My name is Laurel Gross. I'm part of the Scholar Trek team, and we are going to go through the FAFSA form today with the hope that we will guide you through each of the steps required and the information that's involved in the FAFSA, and hopefully make it a little bit easier for you as you navigate financial aid. So some of the things that we want to focus on today are helping you understand what you're going to need if you complete the FAFSA. What type of information should you have handy? Do you get more financial aid if you have more than one child attending college? What happens if I make a mistake or have to change information on the FAFSA, and the deadline to submit the FAFSA? So as we start, hopefully all of you have attended the initial financial aid and FAFSA session where a general discussion of the FAFSA form was discussed. As we proceed through today's program, I am doing so with the assumption that everyone who is completing the form has already received a FAFSA ID, an FSA ID. So each student and parent need to have an ID number. It's just another form of identification for the parent and the student. And if you have multiple students who are applying for financial aid as a parent, you will always use your parent FSA ID, and each of your students will have their own individual ID. So we're going to go step by step through the FAFSA form, again, with the intention that you have already secured that FSA ID, because you will need it at the end to use some of the tools in filling out the form. So when you actually go to studentaid.gov and you get to the form, the first thing it's going to do is ask who is filling out the form. In this case, I'm assuming that I'm going to be talking to parents. So if that's the case, you would fill out, the parent is filling out the form. Obviously, if this is a student who's watching, you would want to fill it out on behalf of yourself. One of the things I want to make sure that parents understand is that even though you are filling this out for your student, when they are asking about you, your, and those types of questions in the pages of the form, they really mean the student. So the intent is that the student applies for financial aid. Parents, of course, can do it on their student's behalf, but the you is generally the student. So it's going to ask you for the student's name, last name, date of birth, and the social security number. One of the things I want to really emphasize, and it seems very simple, but it is so important to make sure that that social security number is correct. If you do have a problem and an incorrect number is submitted, it can be fixed, but it is a rather painful process. So I would strongly recommend that you just check it, recheck it, and maybe even check it a third time before you move on. So we're going to do the demonstration for our student, Larry, demo last name. And one of the things I want to make sure that everybody understands is that when you apply for financial aid, you are applying for financial aid for the school year in which your student will be attending the school. So in this case, for current seniors who will be attending during the 2023-24 school year, it's really important that you use the 23-24 application. If you inadvertently fill out the 22-23 application, you would have had a good practice session, but unfortunately the financial aid in the 2022-23 year application only covers through the summer of 2023. So any student enrolling in the fall of 23 would not be eligible to receive financial aid through that form. As mentioned in the earlier financial aid program, that application for financial aid always opens on October 1st. So on October 1st of 2022, that 2324 form became available. All right. One of the first things they ask you to do is to create a save key. And that's really important because you may not want to fill out the FAFSA all in one sitting, or it may be that you need to go and get additional information. You always want to make sure that you hit continue and you save your work, but create that save key so that you can go back in at a later time and update your information or continue on with the form. One of the things I like about the FAFSA form is that it does give you some guides in the middle of the form here to help you if you have questions. The other thing is that the studentaid.gov website is really pretty good about answering questions that you may have. I typically just do a Google search and I'll type in studentaid.gov, list of colleges, parent income, or whatever the question is that I have. And they have a lot of resources on the website that you can go to that are very, very helpful. So I would encourage you to use those. All right. So a big portion of the FAFSA is really spent on student demographics. It's a pretty harmless section, but they're asking for a lot of detail. This is probably the most significant portion of the application. So the first thing they're going to ask for is, again, the student social security number, student name, student last name, date of birth. As you recall, they are saying your social security number, your first name, your last name. As I mentioned earlier, and if you'll look in that blue box, because the FAFSA form belongs to the student, you and your always, unless otherwise noted, refer to that student. So just keep in mind that even though they're asking for your social security number, it is really your student's social security number. They want the student address just to confirm where you live. They will ask some residency and eligibility information. They want to know how long you've lived in Georgia. If you answer no, you will probably be prompted to another group of questions. If you are a US citizen or you are a qualified non-citizen, you are eligible for financial aid. That generally means that you have a social security number. So if the student has a social security number, they should be eligible for financial aid. So one of the first questions they're going to ask you now is, are you a citizen or are you a eligible non-citizen? And then they would ask for your social security number again and your alien registration number just to confirm eligibility. All right. The student education page is fairly straightforward, but there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of. So the first question, what will your high school completion status be when you begin college? The students will have a high school diploma, regardless of whether or not they have some college credits through dual enrollment, AP, IB programs. They have a high school diploma. That's what you want to put in there. Then the second question, what college degree or certificate will you be working on for the 23-24 school year? This is your student's first bachelor's degree. All right, and then we're going to skip down 2 questions to where it says, what will your college grade level be when you begin the 2023-24 school year? You want to make sure that you put in there that you have never attended college. This is your first year. Now, I understand that many students have dual enrollment credits, AP credits, or IB credits, which may technically classify them as a sophomore or even sometimes a junior when they begin college. For purposes of financial aid, you want to be a freshman. You want to make sure that your student has as much financial aid eligibility as possible. And so it's really important in this, regardless of the fact that your student is going to be able to essentially skip freshman year with all their AP credits or dual enrollment credits. You need to say that they have never attended college, because technically, even though your student was taking college credits while in high school, they were officially a high school student. The next question on this page is, are you interested in being considered for work study? I would strongly encourage all of you to say yes to this question. Work study is another option for financial aid. It would be a job that the university helps you find on campus. The student earns some money, and that money can be used toward tuition or expenses or whatever is needed. There are specific jobs on campus that are just designated work study. So it would be important that you, one, qualify for financial aid and that you indicate that you want that option. You can always opt out of it later on if you decide that's not something you choose to do. The next piece of information they ask for is the student's driver's license. This is just another way for them to verify the student's identification, the student's who they are. So if your student has a driver's license, I would encourage you to put that information in there. If for some reason they don't, it's not going to hurt you, but I definitely think it's something that you should put in there. One other thing I want to remind you of, that in order to be eligible for financial aid or for the Hope and Zell Miller scholarships, men have to register for the selective service when they turn 18. This is not a requirement for federal financial aid, but if you are applying for either Hope or Zell, males need to have had registered. That is a Georgia requirement. All right, now they're going to ask a little bit of information about the family. They want to know if the student was in foster care at any time. Because we are working with students, or this group is intended for students who are living with their parents, I'm going to assume that the answer to that is no. So we would put that in there. And then they're asking for the highest level of school completed by each of the parents. So it could be college and beyond, it could be high school, it's whatever your level of education is, and you can just choose that from a drop-down menu. All right, now they want to know where the student went to high school. So this is an automatic search tool, which the student can use if you plug in the state and the city, or even just the first name of the school. In this case, I used Milton. All the Alpharetta high schools come up, and then you would click on Milton, and it would confirm that in the third screen there. So each school is assigned a number, each high school is assigned a number, and each college is assigned a number. You would not be expected to know that, but by going through that search tool and verifying that information, they now know the identity of the school from which your child has graduated. So it's a pretty straightforward search. The next thing they want to know is what colleges you're applying to. So this gets a little bit more complicated. Again, you can use the search tool. It's very simple. You put in the state and city of the college, or perhaps the college name, and it will come up with a list. In this instance, in the first box, I just typed in Athens, Georgia. And in the second box, it came out with the 3 schools that are listed in Athens. The other ones are listed, elsewhere. And you just click on the college that you want to go to, and then it will show up as, in this case, the University of Georgia. So a couple of things to note here. If you are applying to more than 10 schools, and I would strongly encourage you to refine your list so that hopefully you're not applying to more than 10 schools, but the FAFSA form allows you to enter 10 colleges into the form. Anyway, 10 colleges at a time. So what you would have to do in this case is you would put in colleges 1 through 10 and then complete the FAFSA and submit it to those colleges. So what happens on the other side is once you submit the FAFSA and you've listed that college, again, we'll use the example of the University of Georgia, UGA is going to receive your FAFSA application, and then their financial aid office is actually going to be processing your eligibility if you attend the University of Georgia. Let's say you will also apply to the University of Tennessee and the University of South Carolina. Those other colleges will individually assess your financial aid eligibility. So now we're going to go back to, I've got more than 10 schools I want to apply to. So you've listed colleges 1 through 10 and you've submitted your FAFSA and everybody has that information. All right, now you will need to go back into your FAFSA, and let's say you have 5 more schools that you are applying to. You will have to go back in, and in this college search section, you will have to add colleges 11 through 15 and then submit the FAFSA again so that it goes to those colleges. All right, where it becomes difficult is somewhere down the road, if you realize that there was an error in your FAFSA, or there, for whatever reason, is additional information that you need to add, you now have colleges 11 through 15 in there. So you can go in and you can make the updates to your FAFSA, submit it again so that they get the new information. But then you will have to go back in and reload colleges 1 through 10 so that they also get those updates. They will not automatically get it unless they are listed at on the form at the time it is submitted. It's a little complicated. There actually is a great help tool. If you go to studentaid.gov and just Google more than 10 colleges, there are a couple of paragraphs that really explain exactly how to do it and will give you good guidance on that. All right. When you are selecting your colleges, one of the things they're going to ask you about is the housing option. So in this case, we listed on-campus housing. I would strongly recommend that you list on-campus housing for all of your FAFSA forms, unless you absolutely know now that you are not going to be living on campus. The reason why I would encourage you to do that is because you may have an opportunity for a little more financial aid. Many colleges, include the cost of housing when they're considering financial aid. And so you want to have the option for the greatest amount. If for some reason later on you have, if you've indicated that you are going to live on campus and for whatever reason later on you decide that's not what you're going to do, you would just have to contact the individual financial aid office at the school and let them know that your housing status has changed and you would be living at home or off campus, whatever the option may be. All right. The other questions that they're going to ask you is about the student's marital status. Does the student have dependents? For those of you that are parents helping your high school students, those may seem like odd questions, but understand that the FAFSA is really a one-size-fits-all form. Adults who have decided to go to college at a later time are also filling out this form. It is one size fits all. So they're trying to hit every single category that, that could possibly be. So just go ahead and fill it out with the appropriate answers. And then there's another series of dependency questions. They're asking about serving in the military or a veteran, those types of questions. Was the student in foster care or dependent or ward of the court? Any of those questions. They also ask the student homeless question. Because the student is living with both parents, in this case, I'm assuming that they have not been homeless at any time. If that is the case, you would fill that in, and then there's another series of questions that the student you would need to answer. Okay. So when they are asking questions of the student, they are going to ask the student to provide information on both parents. And they're going to say, they're asking you, I will provide information about my parents, or I'm unable to do that. If you are able to provide information on both parents, I would strongly encourage you to fill that in and say that you will provide the information. There are circumstances where, for whatever reason, the student is estranged from a parent and you cannot answer that for a second parent, then you would need to say that I am unable to provide that information. The problem is when you say that, very often it will result in there being difficulty in the college being able to assess what your financial aid eligibility would be, or that you could be flagged for verification. If you listen to the first financial aid presentation, it talked a little bit about verification. Verification can be a random thing, but it also can be triggered by something where information either doesn't make sense or they feel like they need more information. When those types of things happen, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to the school where your student plans to attend, or you're waiting to hear. Again, as I mentioned, each college has a financial aid office, and there are lots of times where circumstances are such that you can't provide that information, or there is something has happened in a financial situation, things have changed. Don't be afraid to reach out to the financial aid office. Those folks are there to help facilitate students getting aid. And it may be that if your answer triggers something, they may just want more forms. They may need more information, and they may send you 3 more forms and say, fill this out and send it back. And that can keep things going. Just don't sit kind of on hold at any time. If you're not hearing or things have been stalled out, feel free to contact those offices. All right, so whose information should I provide? So this is where they're asking you, and again, I'm assuming for purposes of this particular breakout that both parents are living in the home. So you would say that my parents live together and check off the first one. If your parents are divorced or separated and the student is living with one parent, that is a different situation. That is actually in another breakout section that we have online. Please feel free to look at that. But anyway, fill out the appropriate response to that. If you're legally adopted, you would just fill out that prompt as well. Okay. So assuming that both parents are together in the house, you would respond, are the parents married or remarried, or not married, excuse me. And then if you're married, they are going to ask for the month and year that you were married. All right, so now they want some parent information. They're going to ask for parent social security number, last name, all that information, a parent's date of birth, email address, and the same for the second parent. So you need to be able to provide that information for both parents. They also want to know the parent's legal state of residence. Again, in this case, we're assuming everybody is living together. It's probably for the last 5 years you've been in Georgia. If you haven't been here that long, you would just put no, and then they would ask you certain questions. They want to know how long you've been in the state, the parents have been in the state. Okay, now we're going to talk about other siblings in the house. So how many dependent children do your parents have? So they want to know if there are additional children in the house, because that can affect the amount of aid that you're eligible to receive, and any other dependents that live with your parents. So it could be a grandparent, a relative, somebody who is a legal dependent of the parents that the student is living with. Okay, then they want to know the total household size. So you have 1 for you, 2 for your parents, and then there were 2 siblings in this case. But they also want to know the number of students that are going to be in college when the student is going to be in college. So in this case, in this family, this is the only student that is in college. If you have an older sibling that's in college, you would of course list 2, maybe even 3, whatever the number may be. The one thing I want to encourage you to do, if you had an older student who, when you applied for financial aid, you did not receive any financial aid, if you are going to have more than 1 student in college at the same time, I would encourage you to apply for financial aid again. Sometimes when that second student is added, because they understand you're paying 2 college tuitions, there may be an opportunity where additional money becomes available and you want to take advantage of that. So just because you've been turned down before, feel free to apply again when additional students are coming in. They're going to ask about the parents' tax filings. We're going to assume that everyone has filed their income tax. So with the FAFSA, you'll hear the term, you report taxes for the prior year. So what that means is because the student is starting in 2023, the tax filing that the IRS is, or the government is using to assess financial aid eligibility is for the tax year 2021. So what they're assuming is that by this time of year, you have already filed your taxes for 2021. So we're going to say it's already completed. These parents have completed the IRS 1040. They filed married joint return. So now is where you can use the IRS data retrieval tool. And this was added a couple years ago. And what it does is it identifies the parent by social security number and your FSA ID. And again, you have to have that FSA ID in order to be able to use this retrieval tool. And rather than having you populate the FAFSA, the government will pull your IRS form for 2021, populate your financial aid form, and then it can be submitted to the college. So it will save you a lot of time whenever possible. I strongly recommend that you use that. There are certain instances, like sometimes when parents have their own business, and there are other situations where you may not be able to use that tool. In that case, you're going to have to fill out the financial income and assets form manually, and we're going to go through that in a minute. But if you can use the tool, it really is a lifesaver. All right. So now we're trying to log in. Again, they're asking for that FSA ID username and the FSA ID password so that they can get to the parents' IRS forms for 2021. If that doesn't work, then you will have to go ahead and fill out the financial income forms. And this is the information that they're asking for in this screen. This is where it starts. The thing I like about this, if there is a good thing about this, is that they prompt you how to find the information. For example, in the first box in the upper left corner, it's this amount is found on IRS form 1040, line 11. So it directs you to the line where you are supposed to report that income. When they talk about income tax, it's the total amount from line 22 minus schedule 2, line 2. If it's negative, then you just enter a 0. So in all of these cases, you would always add a number. If for whatever reason you don't have a number to add because it's not applicable, in this section, you want to just add a 0 in there. So they're going to ask how much parent 1 made, how much parent 2 made. And then they're going to ask some parent questions about the tax filings. Was there combat pay? Were there college grants and scholarships reported in your parents' income? Any type of IRA distributions and pensions that were untaxed? All of those things get reported in this form. Okay. They're going to ask about child support that parents paid. And then in the parent untaxed income, they will also ask about child support received for a child. They will ask for earnings from a cooperative education program offered by a college. This most likely does not apply to enrolling freshmen, but once the student is enrolled in college, if they are in a co-op program, often those programs do pay students money as part of that program. If you were an adult student, say in a co-op program, you would have to report it there. Okay. As of today, what is the parents' total current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts? So they want to know how much money you have. They also want to know your net worth of parents' investments, including real estate, but not your parents' home. So your primary residence is not included in this valuation. If you have a second home, unfortunately, you have to include that, but a single home, a primary residence is not included. And then they want to know the net worth of the parents' current business and or investment farms. All right. They also want to know some information about the student and the student's financial situation. So again, they're talking about the student. You know, if a student had a job, say at Chick-fil-A or, you know, whatever job they may have had, it's quite possible that they had to fill out a 1040 and they had to file their income tax for income received. If the student did not have that, then they would probably not file, and you can just write on there, not going to file income tax. If they had filed, again, they would use the IRS retrieval tool. All right, so assuming that you're not using the retrieval tool, they're going to ask how much the student earned from working. They're also going to ask if there's any child support you paid. Again, this is an instance where it is an adult student who may be paying child support, or money earned from the co-op that the student earned, and taxable earnings from need-based employment programs like a federal work-study program that you would list all those out here. Any type of untaxed income that the student has, it could be child support received for all children, housing, food, or other living allowance paid to members of the military. Most of these do not apply to high school students, but you've got to go through one by one. And in this case, none of them were applicable, so we just put in 0. Student assets, they want to know what the current balance is of the student's savings account and net worth of any real estate investments or anything that is not the student's home. All right, so almost done. Near the end here, they're going to ask you to print this page and then select continue to sign it. It's really important that you go ahead and print this. I would print it as a PDF and save it. Please go through and look at this form carefully one more time. This is what the colleges are going to see, and it's the format that they're going to see it in. So if there is an error in something, either a typo or a numerical error or something is just messed up, this is the time to check it and correct it. You can go back in your form and fix it. And then when you get your final that you're ready to submit, make sure that you have a PDF of that and save it for your records. It's a good thing to have in case the colleges come back to you if they have any questions and you need to go look at your form. It's a lot easier to pull this PDF out of your file than to go back and log in and look at your FAFSA form again. Okay, so at that point, the application was successfully paid, and now they're going to ask for a signature. They want parent 1 to sign and they want parent 2 to sign. And this is where we're coming back to that FSA ID. So both parents need that ID because you'll need to submit that again as part of the signature. You have several options for the signature, which we will see in a minute here. They want you to verify that the information is correct and that you understand that your US or state income tax forms that you filed are required to file and to request financial aid. They're also asking for a few other verifications, so make sure you read through that carefully. So on for the signature options, you have several options. They're going to ask for that ID again, the FSA ID password and email address, and then they're going to ask you how you want to sign. So you have the option to sign electronically, which is going to be, quite frankly, the fastest way. As long as you have that FSA ID, you hit continue and go through and follow the steps to sign it and submit the form. If you do not have an FSA ID, for example, let's say the parent doesn't have a social security number for whatever reason, you can print a signature page. You will have to go ahead then and mail it in. It does take a while for things to match up. And for the colleges to get that information. So unless there is a compelling reason for using that mail-in option, I strongly recommend you use the electronic option. Also, it is going to ask you if you want to submit without a signature. This will allow you to submit the FAFSA, but without your signature, you will have to return later to sign. So if you can't sign today for whatever reason, you're going to need to sign before they complete the application. So I would just get it in all at once as best you can. Okay, so that concludes our presentation on the FAFSA. Hopefully you have a better sense of what's required in it, and maybe it seems a little less intimidating. Here are some helpful links that we want to share. There is the FSA Toolkit, which just gives you some information about the FAFSA and a lot of good resource information. There is the link to create the FSA ID. And as I mentioned earlier, that really is the first step to getting to your FSA application and completing the form. There's also a dependent checklist. If for whatever reason you're not sure that your student qualifies as a dependent and you want to make sure what their status is, you can go to follow that link, or you can check out the videos about FAFSA. The other form that some schools require is the CSS profile, which was discussed in the initial presentation. That is a different form of financial aid evaluator that some schools require. It's primarily private schools, although if you live in the state of Georgia, Georgia Tech does require the CSS profile. Thank you very much for joining us, and good luck with your financial aid endeavors, and hopefully your college search process with you and your student will be successful and happy and with a great outcome. So have a great day. Thank you.